I'll go on record and say that I think the 100% reimbursement model in an environment like the United States, I think, is very dangerous.
Yeah. When I think about scam reimbursement globally, I think there are broadly three buckets in which a region will categorize themselves. So you have the UK model, which is very victim friendly. There are pros and cons to that approach. The risk perhaps being an increased risk of first party fraud and collusion, perhaps a carefree customer attitude because they know they're going to get the money back. The second bucket might be, let's call it the middle ground, where some types of scam are in scope for reimbursement, but others are not. An example of that would be EU and PSD3 proposals. So impersonation scams being in scope for reimbursement, but let's say romance scams not being in scope for reimbursement. And then you've got the third bucket, which is a position that markets like Australia have recently put themselves into, where they're saying, no, the customer is liable for the loss, but they're encouraging banks to do more from a technology and intervention perspective to protect the customer wherever possible. Is it fair to say that you see the US in that final bucket right now, where the customer are in the loss?
I'll go on record and say that I think the 100% reimbursement model in an environment like the United States, I think, is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think Australia as well has kind of been very careful.
They have.
With looking at that, with an understanding that we're effectively creating almost like a honeypot for the fraudsters, and we're seeing that happening.
Yeah,
we're seeing that happen across the globe as part of the first party problem. We're seeing that in and as part of the mule problem, we're seeing a lot of training and coaching for how to take advantage of the claims process and the reimbursement process. Even the customer complaints escalation process for how to then reverse the ability of not being
you're declined, but if you say these three things, it's likely that will be overturned.
Here's how they're turning around and actually then give you the money. The United States is actually already in a hybrid between the third and the second model that you proposed. So the reimbursement for imposter scams in particular, Zelle, in a self-regulatory sort of fashion, if you will, moved towards reimbursement for imposter scams. They also moved to a model that we're now seeing the rest of the world start to adopt, which is the 50-50 reimbursement between the sending and the receiving institution for those imposter scams. Now, how do you define exactly what kind of scam it was? What's an imposter? What kind of imposter? Is it bank imposter? Is it your imposter of a government agency and so on? There's a lot of complexity here.